means everything. Playing them, being a Michigan fan, my whole life.
The kind of questions that answer themselves.
Yeah, I think this game's just huge in general. It's two 7-0 teams, two top 10 teams, but it's just a mistake.
Well, for me, it's a little bit of the respect factor.
Good afternoon, and it's an afternoon live here. That was Mel Tucker, Sharon Moore, Jim Harbaugh, Aiden Hutchinson. Thanks to BTN, TMBR, and MSUSpartans.com as we get ready to get things underway. We are less than 24 hours away from kickoff, and there's nobody that's better actually to bring in when you have Michigan and Michigan State. It's always a big game. It was a real big game. Pull out the big guns and call Larry Lage of the Associated Press, who is on the broadcast right now. Larry, how are you? Thanks for joining me.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's funny, how many Michigan State football or basketball games have we talked about in the days leading up to those games for football and basketball over the last 25 years?
Well, you know what? There's a bunch that stand out. I can remember when you worked in Lansing, and there was a Larry Foote quote or something that needed to be
Ian Gold.
Oh, Ian Gold. That's right. I was a linebacker. All right, that was close. And I had the quote, and those games up in East Lansing that I did, the 99 and the 2001 game, those are the ones. Of course, the one a couple years ago, Harbaugh's first game, that one gets talked about quite a bit as well. All those Spartan victories. But, Tom Brady, the one part, I was always adamant in that 99 game that, it was the Michigan State defensive line. They were so dominant that game. And, Drew Henson did start the second half of that game, and I always said, it didn't matter if it was Tom Brady or Drew Henson, Michigan State, because the defensive line was so dominant that day. And and Brady did get in there late and made it a really close 1-point score. And there were some Michigan fans after it said, if Tom would have done that, he would have led that comeback. And after all these years and seeing what he did, like down 28-3 in the Super Bowl, and probably another 10, 20, maybe even 30 great comebacks in the NFL, I have to concede, those Michigan fans may have been right about Tom Brady in that game.
Yeah, it's funny when you look at the career Tom Brady has had. You probably have to be from the great state of Michigan to know that he split time his last year at Michigan. I mean, it's just amazing. And we'll always wonder what kind of football player Drew Henson would have been if he just stuck with football. He obviously tried to do baseball, and then he tried to do the NFL, and neither quite worked out. But I mean, phenomenal athlete, good guy as well, pride of Brighton. And, one of the many memories of this game, Saturday will be 32 in a row that I will witness in person, dating to the 1990 game with number 1 Michigan going for number 2, Desmond Howard getting tripped in the end zone by Eddie Brown or defended, catching the ball. But as the late George Perlis had said many times, if Desmond held onto that ball, we wouldn't still be talking about that game. So no call, no catch. That day, I got into Michigan State as a student, leaving Ann Arbor, and then I came back to Ann Arbor in 2000. But it's an absolute treat to get paid to sit in seats you can't buy for this one. 32 in a row, not bad for a 48-year-old kid.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to George Perlis. I remember a lot of different things that he said, but I always the one that always comes to mind is when he was talking about bowl games. I think they were going to the Cherry Bowl. Somebody was trying to say, hey, it's not a very distinguished bowl. And George said, bowls are like hams. I've never had a bad ham. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good line from George. And Larry, this particular game and this rivalry, we know it's a top 10 matchup, and number 6 versus number 8. We say you throw the stats out the window and the numbers, but when you look at the trends and the talent and the coaching, are there things that you're not what are the things you're not throwing out the window in this particular matchup tomorrow?
I think the big key is going to be, especially with this rain that is here and is apparently here to stay, what team can throw the ball and make plays with a downfield passing game? Can Cade McNamara do it? Can Peyton Thorne do it? I think Peyton Thorne has better receivers than Cade McNamara has. And I'm just fascinated to see, it's interesting. We talk about Henson and Brady, little bit of a similar dynamic with JJ McCarthy and Cade McNamara. And I think a lot of Michigan fans and followers have lamented that JJ has not gotten more snaps, more series, including last week when they're up 33-7 and he's still playing spot duty. And I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to go to JJ McCarthy, and his inexperience might bite him.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of Michigan fans myself that way. Like, get McCarthy in, have him going through some reads. You don't need to have him in to hand the ball off. How about have him in and throw the football? And I'm just looking at the snap counts. 14 against Northwestern, 6 against Nebraska, 10 against Wisconsin. They could have gotten him in a little bit more. And I know Jim Harbaugh has said this, that he was asked, is it a feel or is it a plan? And he said, yes, it's both of those things. So I just wonder what the plan is in this one. Like, to me, it's like, I'm sure they'll insert him in a couple different spots and things. He's a good runner and we know he can throw the ball. Maybe there'd be a trick play that they'd want to get him in, maybe down at the goal line because he's a better runner. But, if Michigan falls behind and they need a spark, that's also the thing that you might not just be putting him in, you might be putting him in for good in that game. It just depends when you think you need that spark. Would it be a halftime? Would it be one bad series? I don't think it's going to be one bad throw from Cade McNamara, but, one bad series. And if you get down by double-digit points, I think you could see J.J. McCarthy for the rest of the game. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll get right to it. I think both teams are going to stack the box to stop the run. They're going to leave their corners on islands without much safety help and dare the other quarterback to throw downfield. And I think Peyton Thorne, with a better receiving core, has a better chance of doing that than Cade McNamara. I think that's going to lead to Jim Harbaugh finally playing J.J. McCarthy more in a really hostile environment with huge stakes. And I think his inexperience will cost Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, who probably should have played him more earlier in the season. That's the way I see this game going down. And I think that is going to be the key to the game. Which team can make plays down the field in the passing game? It's funny. All three of the teams I cover kind of have the same situation. Jared Goff can't throw the ball downfield either. So I see a lot of the same stuff.
Larry Lage from the AP. You mentioned the weather, and this is going to be the first real grass game for Michigan. And I know they'll have practice out of the practice field. They have grass field, so all week long. But there hasn't been the rain to go along. I don't know. You got to make the decision on the cleats. And yeah, you want to get a feel for the grass. It's a little bit different than playing on the field turf. But you do wonder if that is an advantage. Michigan State. They play on grass. It gets a little wet. Michigan, fish out of water a little bit in that case. Maybe, if we're looking at it, could be something as an advantage for MSU.
Well, it's funny. On Monday, Jim Harbaugh talked about that and that they were going to practice on Michigan's grass fields this week and have the guys try out different sizes of cleats to kind of get a feel for what works. And as people in the great state of Michigan can tell you, there's been rain this week, so they've had some practice with that. But I think when you're breaking down this game, in my preview for the Associated Press, I kind of had 5 things, but if there were 10 things, that would have been one of them. I think especially with this weather, I think it could be a factor. I mean, we're slicing and dicing this game, and I think that's a top 10 factor. Let's go to the running backs. I mean, I'm not sure you can find a college football game with 3 better running backs than you're going to have in this game with Kenneth Walker, Blake Corum, and Hassan Haskins. Each do it a little bit of a different way. I think Kenneth Walker is, if you will, a combination of Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum. Some wiggle, some speed, some agility, some power. And Michigan probably has a little bit of a better offensive line. Back to Cade. Obviously, one of the things that they like about Cade is he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He manages the game very well. And when you have a defense as good as Michigan's has been so far and a running game, that certainly lets you do that. Here's a little nugget from my preview that I thought was pretty interesting. Dennis Fithian, out of ranked teams, where does Michigan rank among passing attempts?
I will say so the 25 ranked team, 25th.
So you're close. Coastal Carolina is the only ranked team that has thrown fewer passes than Michigan. So they're 24th, right? Pretty good guess. Cade McNamara, he is averaging 7.64 yards per attempt. That ranks 61st in FBS football. It's a good time to remind our listeners that Ronnie Bell, Michigan's top receiver, went down with a season-ending knee injury in the first week against Western Michigan on a punt return. And that was a huge hit. And I think Cornelius Johnson's a really good receiver. He'd be a great number 2. And shout out to him for his punt block last week and his first opportunity to do that against Northwestern. That was pretty sweet. I did a double take. I'm like, is there a number 6 who did that that's not Cornelius Johnson? Because, in college football, there's a lot of players that have the same number as a teammate. So I had to do a double take, but that was a heck of a block, just to digress real quick. But, Michigan's not real deep at receiver after Cornelius Johnson. They're just not. They've got some okay players, but no game breakers. And Michigan State's got 2 with Reed and Naylor. Both have scored 60, 70, 80, 90-yard touchdowns already this year. So I think Michigan State has some big play capability in the ground game and through the air, whereas I think Michigan's is limited to the ground with, one of the best tandem of running backs you're going to see on a college football team.
Yeah, you say it's a good time to mention Ronnie Bell and not having him. It's a bad time to mention Xavier Worthy, who was trying to get it. He committed to Michigan and wanted to get in early for spring, and it didn't happen, so he went to Texas. And I know in the Red River rivalry, he had 250, whatever it was, close to 300 yards. So that wouldn't be a bad option to have against MSU. Yeah, you know what? Roman Wilson was coming along, and I know they just sprinkled him in last week, so maybe he'll be available. Maybe he would get up and running. I feel like, they always have X factors or wild cards. I put a wild card on J.J. McCarthy. That seems to fit because we don't really know when they're going to insert him and how they're going to play him. But I think A.J. Henning in the punt return game, he reminds me of Steve Breston, the way when he runs. I haven't seen that. We know they like to give him the ball running. He had a long touchdown early in the year, but he hasn't been that pass catcher. And really, you're right, McNamara, when you look at this game, the 2 dynamic and big play wide receivers for Michigan State, that is definitely standing out. Michigan needs their guys to catch those contested balls, and they need somebody else to step up, whoever it's going to be down that line. Maybe it could be the tight end, who had a good game last week. But I'm going to put Henning in there. They haven't targeted him as much, but he has the ability to run after catch. Can he catch the ball? Can they scheme something up to get him the ball?
Yeah, and that goes to Josh Gaddis, and I think there's been questions outside of the program about some of his decision making and his red zone calls. I mean, Michigan has run the ball really well, even when other teams know it's coming. And then last week, Michigan gets cute with play action pass to a number 2 tight end with another play that's escaping right now, and end around to the short side. Like, what are you doing, Josh Gaddis? Especially when you have the running backs we've talked about that clearly Michigan knows. And I will say, of course, 5 days later, it's easy to say, what are you doing? Because it didn't work. If it worked, we'd be talking about what an innovative play call. But in real time, I was also tweeting, what are you doing? And I think I even used the word cute. Michigan just got cute, and it cost them. So this is a game where Michigan and Michigan State have to take advantage of the red zone opportunity with touchdowns. Because, again, with the field conditions, I think that makes it trickier to kick field goals at times, especially long ones. It might not be a red zone situation, but both teams have really good kickers too, as we continue to break down this game. So I can't wait. Is it noon yet? Saturday?
I mean, it's close. I mean, it's less than 24 hours, and I don't know how much you sleep. So, and I know you get down there early, and you'll have to. And by the way, I think everybody that's listening to this follows Larry on Twitter at Larry Lage. But maybe there'd be one or two people that think, oh, there's somebody to follow. But you know what, Larry?
Who's that guy?
The last time that Michigan was up there, you had Devin Bush, and you had the victory march, whatever they do before the game. And I would think that this would be the most watched pregame routine here, and how they have to, set out the minutes of exactly what's going on and who's taking the field and everything. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that'll be checking in on Twitter a couple hours before the game just to see, shenanigans or just if they're doing anything different here, just how they're rolling out. They're the kickers. They're out there now.
Yeah, and
if you're watching that.
No, don't follow me for that kind of coverage if you're listening, or Dennis, because I'm hoping to tailgate with non-alcoholic beverages right outside the stadium in lot 79. One of my buddies has a big tailgate, and looking forward to seeing a lot of people. I mean, my whole life, Dennis, I've only lived in these two towns, so there's not too many people I know that don't have an affiliation to one school or the other. So I kind of like the noon start. It opens up the evening for me with my friends that are still standing. And I just can't wait for toe to meet leather at noon on Saturday.
The media loves noon starts. That's no surprise of coming.
You know what? By the way, I'm always on deadline. I'm a glass half full guy. If it was a night game, I would have been okay with that too. Because when you're writing for the Associated Press, you got to spit out your story right now, whether it starts at noon or it starts at 7:30. So to me, that doesn't matter. I'm a glass half full guy and go either way. And by the way, while we're on the kickoff times, I thought the relative uproar about it being a noon game from Michigan State fans was stupid, really dumb, whatever.
Yeah, well,
if you're one of them, I'm sorry, Dennis.
No, I don't care what time they play it. Like, come on. I would have picked 3:30 myself, but and if I'm tailgating, I think it's ideal to be 3:30. Just you get a little bit more partying in. Night game. It's a free for all, and things do look cool under the lights. So I would have been there for that too. I'd have been there. They could have played it at 9 a.m. I'd be out and I'd be up there. Larry, you lived in Ann Arbor. You went to school in East Lansing. There is going to be a huge tailgate option at Cedar Village, and I don't know what about Cedar Village. It's infamous.
I lived there. For a semester.
Well, what's a tailgate like going to be like? For the stool party that they're going to have down there, the Barstool tailgate. I mean, what's that?
I don't know. And it's funny. I do not follow Barstool, but somebody retweeted them, and they were asking about their location and if anyone had any feedback on it. And people were writing, well, you might want to start by being in the right town. They're in Lansing, which is close, but I don't even know where they're at. But I do know that Fox and ESPN will both have their pregame shows on the same campus on the same day for the first time this season. That tells you how big of a game this is. Takes a lot for ESPN to promote someone else's game, but clearly the Michigan State game, when you're looking at number 6, Michigan, number 8, Michigan State, both undefeated, that has brought both networks to campus, and the backdrops will be the stadium, and they're on opposite sides. So if you know East Lansing or Spartan Stadium, game day is going to be set up on the inside of the track, kind of over by Munn Field toward Lansing. And then Fox is going to be on the other side, the east side toward Detroit. Again, both will have a backdrop of the stadium, and they're going to be on opposite sides. So kind of cool dueling college pregame shows there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there are a lot of different storylines through this game. We're just going through and picking and choosing, the different ones. I listened to some audio from Mel Tucker this morning. He had his coaching show, and I played a little bit of that. And this is something that and I think everybody listening knows that Mark D'Antonio used those comments from Mike Hart, and that was fuel. And there's some people saying if you need that, but there's definitely, the disrespect card. But I don't know, Larry, if you heard it in its entirety. Let me play a little bit of what Mel Tucker had to say, and I can just get your thoughts. This is a courtesy of MSUSpartans.com.
Well, for me, it's a little bit of the respect factor. I think in the, I've been very fortunate to coach in a lot of rivalry games, where it's Ohio State, Michigan, like you say, Florida, Georgia, or it could be Green Bay, Green Bay and the Bears, or Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and there's always, even though there's hatred, so to speak, but there's always there's always a kind of a mutual respect amongst with the teams, between the teams, but this rivalry is not so much like that. So
no respect. No respect from Mel Tucker. I know that last year, he was the coach. And Joe Milton didn't respond to when he was asked about, you were probably in that news conference when he was asked about the linebacker Simmons, and Milton was like, who? I don't know who that is. And, Spartan fans are like, this is typical of Michigan. You think that's where this is coming from?
I think it's part of it. I think Antoine Simmons, the pride of Ann Arbor Pioneer, the greatest high school around, of course, shout out. He played with Jordan Wogu, by the way, in high school, former Michigan baseball player in the minor leagues with the Cubs system, just to shout out another Pioneer guy. Of course, I went to school there. If I lived right by Michigan Stadium. And just to clarify, grew up in Ann Arbor, went to Michigan State, worked in Lansing after, back in Ann Arbor since 2000. So I live here, not past tense.
Oh.
Just so you know. So I think part of it is Michigan State always has a chip on its shoulder. The little brother tag that Mike Hart famously or infamously gave them about 15 years ago. I think that is just part of the fabric of being a Michigan State Spartan, is kind of having that, we don't get respect, chip on their shoulder kind of thing. And, when you think about hype and publicity, you can see where Michigan State might have, that feeling, because, Jim Harbaugh sells, and Jim Harbaugh wins every offseason. He has not won the big games during the season, as we've seen over the last 6 years, but he's got chances this year. Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State give Jim Harbaugh a chance to change the narrative. And, he'll get that chance the next month. But I don't want to play right into Michigan State's inferiority complex by talking about Michigan when you ask about Michigan State. But without a doubt, I think that's part of the deal. And did Michigan State get the credit it thinks it deserved from the glory years of the D'Antonio era, which was a pretty impressive 3 or 4 year stretch there, including a college football playoff, a Big Ten title. Maybe not, but it's what have you done for me lately? World now more than ever with social media, and what you're doing next is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think it always is hurt Michigan State a little bit, being as far away from Detroit as it is, and Ann Arbor being as close, that you just get more talk for Michigan that way. There are probably a lot of other reasons, like Bo in the 70s and things like that. Larry, you've talked about right at the beginning, Michigan State having, I don't know if you said more versatile to get the running attack. They've got the wide receivers, and I would agree with that. The case for Michigan is when you start looking at their numbers, they've scored more points per game than Michigan State, and they've allowed less. And I do think they have more talent on their defense. And, Nebraska's defensive line and also Indiana, they held Kenneth Walker to under 4 yards per carry, and they were able to do a decent job against those wide receivers. So maybe Michigan's defense will be able to contain them, and maybe they'll control the time of possession with their running game. But yeah, I think, you start looking at the point spread, it's 4.5, and where the game's being played. I don't know if it's an X factor weather-wise, cleats, grass field, any of that. I can see why people would pick Michigan State in this game. Have you thought about which way you're going to go and how it's going to end up?
27-24, Michigan State is my pick. And I
Pretty close.
Discussed it earlier in this podcast that I think Michigan State's ability to make big plays down the field in the passing game will prove to be the difference. I have a vision that J.J. McCarthy is going to get some extended run, and I think his inexperience will be costly for the Wolverines and Jim Harbaugh, who critics will say, why didn't he play him more to get him more snaps with live bullets? And I think that would be a legitimate question. It was in real time as well. We've all seen the talent that J.J. McCarthy has throwing the ball. And I think you get a taste of how competitive he is when you see him run the ball, because he's not looking to slide or get out of bounds. Like, he's looking to take it to the house, because I think he knows he has limited opportunities to make plays, and he's trying to do all he can to stay in the game. So I think it's going to be a fascinating game. You talked a little bit about the point spread. I've heard of the Michigan bump, where Vegas pretty much knows a lot of people are going to bet on Michigan no matter who they're playing, because it's such a popular school with, I think, the largest living alumni base in the world. There's just so many Michigan fans, whether they went to school there or not, that they have to make the other side more attractive. So I think that is at play here, because I think if you weren't talking about gambling, this would be a toss-up game. I think it's a toss-up game, and Michigan State, has dominated this series in recent years like they haven't in decades. And Spartans won 9 of 13. As someone who grew up on Michigan football in the 70s and 80s, I never thought I would see a swing like that. The last time Michigan State had a stretch this good was from 1950 to 1969, when the Spartans were 14-4-2. Bo Schembechler absolutely dominated the rivalry. Lloyd Carr and Gary Moeller did pretty well. Jim Harbaugh's 3-3, and that's that 9-4 record isn't all hung on him, but it was 7-1 before he got there, with the end of Lloyd Carr and Rich Rodriguez and Brady Hoke. I never thought. And I've told Mark D'Antonio this, I never thought Michigan State could have the success that it had under Mark D'Antonio because of Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame beating Michigan State for the best recruits in the state and in the region. And he proved me wrong. Now let's see if Mel Tucker can do it too. And of course, little bit of an elephant in the room is LSU going to swoop in and take him away like LSU did with Nick Saban a generation ago?
They only lose 1 or 2 games. I could definitely see that happening. I also think, and it's not good from a Michigan standpoint, but I do think it's true, because Harbaugh is in his 7th year, and it seemed like he had to get over it, or it finally, put D'Antonio and put him in the rearview mirror, and it put Michigan State, the program. Now they could start concentrating on Ohio State. Then Tucker did what he did last year as a 20-point underdog. Jim Harbaugh can't fall to 0-2. He can't lose this game. So people saying that, house money and all the pressures on Harbaugh. Well, I don't like that. I do think that's true. I don't know how much that factors in, but I don't know if it stinks for Michigan. It's what you go to the it is what it is card, but that's also a factor there too. I mean, I don't know how loose they can go out there and play and say, hey, we have nothing to lose, but it does feel like that.
I think Jim Harbaugh is back at Michigan next year. I think this 7-0 start seals that, as if there was any doubt anyway. But he has to beat Michigan State and Ohio State flat out. Because falling to 3-4 against the Spartans and falling to 0-6 with one loss spared because of the COVID breakout with the team, that just doesn't sit well. And it's going to be fascinating to see how it shakes out. I think those will be his record in those games. And even if you lose to Penn State and Michigan stumbles to a 9-3 regular season record, I think you can say that's a good season for Jim Harbaugh, another good season, and he hasn't really had a great one. And certainly enough to keep his job. Although Ward Manuel's new contract with Jim Harbaugh is essentially a year-to-year deal because it would not cost the university a lot to buy him out, but that's not happening. There's no momentum for that, even with a relative collapse this year. And I'll tell you, living in Ann Arbor, you hear a lot of things. And the things you hear about Michigan football players is that they're good guys. And if I heard otherwise, I probably wouldn't say it. But because I hear that they're good guys, I'm happy to share it because I think it's true. I think these are good guys that are good athletes, and many of whom attempt to be student athletes as best they can. I think the same is true at Michigan State. And I think we are so fortunate in the great state of Michigan to have, in my opinion, the greatest combination of college football and basketball teams with a market that has 4 professional sports teams. You cannot find another area that has 2 big-time football and basketball programs and 4 pro teams. Because trust me, when I've told my bosses I need more help and I need a raise, I've said that because you just can't find it. If you go south, there's not as much pro sports. If you go east, they're usually not good in college football. You go west, they're missing something. In the great state of Michigan, we have it as good as anyone has it in the sports world, in my opinion, and blessed to be in year 22 at the AP and getting to cover it all with a great crew of freelancers that help prop me up and give me a day off in theory, like today, by the way. Yeah, thank you. For you, Dennis, I'll talk to you on a day off.
Well, hey, that is awesome, man. Putting in the work on the day off and on your day off. And you know what? The Associated Press, it is a prestigious entity. And it does make me think of something to ask you, Larry. You know, you spent not only the 22 years there, you're living in present tense in Ann Arbor. And I know, like, you need to talk to Tom Izzo. You can pick up your phone and call him. You need to get a hold of Jim Harbaugh. It's the same way. And
used to be with Jim, by the way. Not after I asked Karan Higdon if he would guarantee a win over Ohio State like his coach did.
Hey, you know, you still had to ask the question, all right? You had to ask the question. But you also mentioned the administration and money, and Michigan does have this Dr. Anderson case that is still ongoing. Do you have a sense if it's getting close to being I guess what we would talk a settlement? This is
resolved,
closer to a settlement, or do you think that this could I don't say drag out, could play out, into 2022? What do you think?
I think we're not close to the two sides, and by two sides, the university's lawyers and the lawyers representing the victims of Dr. Robert Anderson. Someday they're going to settle. The university has said we were wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And they're in mediation, which is supposed to be confidential. And to me, the fact that we're seeing so many attempts by law firms and their public relation arms to generate publicity or create interview opportunities with the victims of Robert Anderson tells you that the attorneys are still trying to turn up the heat to put pressure on Michigan to settle for more than they're willing to settle for at this point. I mean, I think that's what that means. If if we were really close to a settlement, I don't think I would still be hearing from attorneys representing the victims on a relatively regular basis, hoping that I will write about their clients. Now, we have written a lot and shared the victims' stories because they deserve to be told. But at some point, as a writer for the Associated Press, who prides himself on delivering news, the next bit of news to me is a settlement. Now, there will be victims that will have their stories told and shared with media outlets. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think the next time we write about it, it'll be a settlement. And for all parties, you would hope that sooner than later. But to answer your question, I see it dipping into 2022 because, heck, we're only 2 months away from that.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That isn't that far. So, yeah, I don't know. People don't have people ask me, I don't really have a sense. Somebody was telling me that, why doesn't Michigan just settle? They've got the insurance company. And I think that might be one of the things the insurance company is saying, look, we're not just settling. It's not like we're just settling. This is
Michigan's going to pay. Michigan should pay.
Yes.
Michigan has said it was wrong and that it did not protect these student athletes and other people in and around the university from one of its employees. The question is, how much is each victim going to get? And that's what they're, trying to hash out behind closed doors. And clearly it's not cut and dried, or it would have been handled by now. The more this goes on, the more pain and suffering there is for both sides. And no one has suffered more than the victims. Let's make that really clear. But no one is winning or getting the upper hand while this is playing out short of a resolution and a settlement.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time here on your day off. I'll just say, you're talking about going down there tomorrow and tailgating. I love tailgating at Michigan. I'm the same way. Almost, 99% of the time I was going into the stadium. So it was just, maybe, trying some food at a tailgate and some things like that. But, waiting to after the game. But I know in 3 consecutive years, 99, 2001, and 2003, Michigan only won one of those games. Chris Perry had 51 carries in 2003, and it was a smoker to duck it. And then that Plaxico Burris game in 99. I was tailgating in those, and that was the same thing. I was just, I was working and went in, but fabulous weather, and it just was the greatest of times out there. East Lansing, man, you can tailgate just like Michigan, man. And for all the animosity and, Mel Tucker saying disrespect, when you walk through that, it's not all green and all maize and blue, man. It is as mixed as possible. Even under one canopy, you'll go in there, man, and it's a great scene. It's a great thing to be a part of, even if you aren't going to the game. So I'm glad you're doing that. Have a great time.
I promise, Dennis. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right. We will talk again soon. Take care, Larry. And we'll be looking for, we're always looking for your stuff. I'll be following your Twitter feed during the game.
Thanks, buddy.
See ya. Take care. There he is, Larry Lage from the Associated Press, joining us here. I don't know why I had to yell it like that. I'm working on that. Larry Lage, Associated Press. We listened to a little bit of the sound, and you heard Mel Tucker talking about the disrespect. Let me play that one more time from MSU.Spartans.com.
Well, for me, it's a little bit of the respect factor.
All right, that respect factor. Jim Harbaugh was asked about what this would mean for recruiting. What does it mean, to make sure you get the victory in state for the Big Ten East. And he responded more than once, I think at least 3 times, saying this.
Obviously, the kind of questions that answer themselves.
So, yeah, you just need the win. I liked what Sharon Moore, Michigan's offensive line coach, when he was asked about the magnitude of the game, had to say.
Yeah, I think this game's just huge in general. It's 2 7-0 teams, 2 top 10 teams, but it's Michigan State. Everybody understands the impactfulness of the game and what it means to everybody on all different levels. So the right approach is being taken in the building and with the players and with the coaches. So just excited about it, and it's impactful for everybody in every venue.
Yeah, we've got the memorabilia minute and the Michigan recruiting spotlight ahead. One last bit of audio, and it's from the Big Ten Network, and it's Aiden Hutchinson, Michigan defensive end, on the rivalry.
It means everything. Playing them, being a Michigan fan my whole life, growing up here, you live the rivalry every single day. I got friends that are Michigan State fans. This in-state rivalry is just is so huge, especially growing up in Michigan.
There he is, Aiden Hutchinson. All right, I've said it a few times this week, but starting on Monday, I'll have the video to accompany the podcast, and you'll have all that. You'll be made aware of it coming up on Monday. Excited about that. If you listen to the podcast, what you're doing right now, I'll be, making that available, but also where you can listen live if you don't want to go to YouTube, any way that I can, and the different ways, I'll get it out to you there. All right, the memorabilia minute and the Michigan recruiting spotlight. The memorabilia minute is going to be better when I do have video holding up the item that you're able to see. But also this week, I have just been looking here in the Peach Mountain studio for different items, memorabilia, and I was looking at the Detroit News this weekend, and they were going around for different people's, they call them fan caves, man caves, whatever, and there's just some spectacular, and I've seen some spectacular basements, living rooms, dens. I've seen some fabulous RVs that are decked out. Like, I don't know if they would, I probably have 100, if I take away the sports cards, probably have thousands of things, but, probably have 100 things that maybe one or two of my items would be coveted by these extensive fan caves. But I was going down to the control room downstairs, and I walked by, there was a cooler, and there I thought, oh, Michigan Minute. Or memorabilia minute. Do I have something? I opened up the cooler. There's a bunch of magazines in there. And I thought, well, do I have something like Michigan State? And the first two things that were on top were these Beckett baseball monthlies. And these are magazines from back in the day. This one's from 89 and this one's from 93 that I have in front of me. And they both have Jim Abbott, the former Michigan pitcher who was born without his right hand. He played football and, of course, a great baseball player. And I said, oh, there's Jim Abbott. And what sealed it for me is I was, again, looking through the Detroit News, and they were looking for a local national celebrities that had ties to both Michigan and Michigan State. And they have a comment from Jim Abbott. I said, oh, well, that's perfect. Here's what Jim Abbott, the Flint native, 10-year MLB veteran, Michigan baseball alum, has to say about the Michigan State game tomorrow. Quote, I'm picking U of M 30-21. Jake Moody comes up big with 3 field goals and 3 extra points. MSU's speed at wide receiver does some damage, but U of M's running backs control the ball and the game. Hopefully no shenanigans from Sparty's timekeeper. And he has a smiley face there. The shenanigans that he refers to is in 2001. That was Spartan Bob. He had his big foam finger on, and he had a hard time with the play clock. I would say something about that before I get to the recruiting minute. In real time, being there at that game in 2001, being in the press box, and I was down. I was probably at the 20 where I was sitting up in the press box, the state press box before it was renovated. Further down there, it was pretty good sight there. And the thing is, when you watch football, back then, in the 20th century, this game was played in 2001. So it's just starting, but you remember, you watch so many games that come down to the end and watching the official spot the ball, that the time would just elapse. Now And, really since that game, the game has evolved where, and they should do it like the NBA. They should have tenths of seconds. They don't. They should. And you can get that ball spotted. You can get timeouts, and things can happen. Like you're using those seconds now. Because I remember when it happened, it really did seem egregious. Like if I had seen 100 football games done in that situation, all of them would let the clock run out. And I remember thinking, man, the officials really spotted that ball fast. Like he was jumping over people to get the ball spotted, so they could get their last a shot there. And then, the timekeeper. And I remember Bobby Williams said, "We've got no problem with the timekeeper." It's like, no, you wouldn't have any problem with the timekeeper. Of course, Carr did and all of that. But probably 10, 15 years after the fact, I went back and watched that just to see how egregious it was. Oh yeah. Spartan Bob, they were holding Larry Stevens and, all these things to the play before. And they did hold Larry Stevens. That's true. But when it came down to the very play, the Spartan Bob foam finger, stop the clock issue, it didn't play out like after all those years, so my memory, I was looking at it, I'm like, it was really not that egregious. And I think a lot of that had to do with just, how the game evolved after that and how people and teams and coaches really use those seconds and downing the ball and officiating too. Prior to that, I don't know, that's not the game where you say, oh yeah, and then things started, but it just didn't look as egregious watching it, whatever it was 10 or 15 years ago. And looking back at it, because I remember thinking, oh man, that's a big time controversy. Michigan got screwed in that one. And maybe they did with the hold call before that. And it did seem like most of the other games that I watch in that situation, if not all of them, the time would run out. And, it's history, and it was a great play for MSU. Smoker to duck it. He threw it up there, and the crowd went wild and all of that. All right, the Michigan recruiting spotlight. Michigan has they lost a commitment this week, so they are at 17 commitments with 1 5-star, and Tayshawn Trent was a 4-star, so they now have just 3 4-stars, and they fall to 18 in the Rivals team rankings. They were 17 when they had 18 commits and lost the 4-star, and now they have 17 commitments and they are ranked 18th. I looked and focused on the Michigan State recruiting trail. And, last year, 2001, Michigan pulled Andrell Anthony out of East Lansing, the wide receiver who wears number 1, who I think could be a factor in some kind of trick play for Michigan. That's one of my predictions in the game. Also, Michigan flipped Rashawn Benny last year in the second recruiting signing day, however that worked. You remember the defensive tackle? He flipped. But then this year, the 22, Dylan Tatum, he picked MSU, and that was a little bit of surprise to Michigan people that, Ron Bellamy, who's Tatum is from West Bloomfield, thinking that you have the connection there. And State also got Van Sumeren. Remember, they had Ben, his brother, but Michigan changing to a 3-4 defense. Ben transferred to Michigan State, and then Alex Van Sumeren went and followed his brother to East Lansing. So with the change of defense, so State got the Van Sumerens there. Now, I'm looking down the road to 2023, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and that is that there's 2 quarterbacks, and both Michigan and Michigan State are looking at them in the class of 23. You've got Dante Moore out of King and CJ Carr out of Saline. Maybe, and there's other schools that are involved. When it comes down to CJ Carr, you think about his grandfathers are both in the College Football Hall of Fame. Lloyd, the coach of the 97 team, is a College Football Hall of Famer. And then Tom Curtis, CJ Carr's other grandfather, he, I think, single season interception record holder for Michigan all time. Interception holder for Michigan. Those stats, those records still hold. He still is the interception leader all time, single season and career at U of M. And Tom Curtis also won a Super Bowl. So he has CJ Carr his one grandfather was a coach of the national championship 97 team, and his other grandfather won a Super Bowl. Did it with the Colts. It was pretty good when it comes down to CJ, but Dante Moore, a little bit higher ranked, so I go after him. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. A couple other guys that, and just looking down the line here, that both Michigan and Michigan State could be going head-to-head for, and there is two offensive linemen, one that goes to Cass Tech, Cole Dellinger, and then another offensive lineman out of West Bloomfield, Amir Herring, and then one other defensive lineman, and he is at Cass Tech, I think. Let's see if he's at Cass Tech. Detroit Cass Tech, 4-star defensive lineman, Jalen Thompson. So those are the guys over the next recruiting cycle that Michigan and Michigan State will be going head-to-head for. And, hey, you know what? The winner tomorrow, you win this game, a lot easier. You call up Dante Moore and say, hey, Dante, what'd you think? Did you like how we worked in J.J. McCarthy and what was going on with Cade? That's how it'll work here. Hey, Cole Dellinger, we need you on that offensive line. You see us road grading MSU through the rain up there to the tune of 400 yards on the ground? Or how about just a redo of Washington? 55 carries, 345 yards. Imagine that's somewhat how recruiting calls go the day after of Michigan and Michigan State. All right, I want to thank Larry Lage from the AP. My prediction is Michigan 30, Michigan State 25. I think Michigan's defensive line, Aiden Hutchinson, I don't have to say much about him. But Ojabo on the other side, he has been a playmaker in 55. I like the two defensive tackles for Michigan and how they've played. Chris Hinton, who was a 5-star player, he looks like that now at times when you watch him down there on the defense. And Mozzie Smith had a lot of offseason hype. He shows up on rewatch when you watch those games. I like that Michigan D-line, and I like Mike Morris, number 90. He plays inside sometimes, plays outside, but he's been in the mix there. He's around the football all the time. He won the, some kind of Michigan award, in-house award, hard hat award. Had a good week, hard hat, working hard. I guess that's what it means. I can find that out. I should probably know, but it's something along those lines. But I like Morris, and I think Michigan's defensive line can stop the run with Kenneth Walker and free up those linebackers who they're the key tackling. And I think offensively, Michigan has to get to 30 points. And you know what? If Cade, you get out there, and I don't want to be all, hard on Cade McNamara. I know he does the different things that, he hasn't lost a game. He hasn't get sacked much. He's, able to get rid of the ball, but you got to make some plays in the passing game, and he can be helped out by these wide receivers that can catch some of these contested balls. Running better routes too, but also Cade throwing the ball with more anticipation. When you watch a passing game, you don't even have to get into all the technical things and all these different things, but zip on the ball, throwing with anticipation. When you see these guys, I'm watching Aaron Rodgers last night, thrown off of different platforms, probably not the best one to talk about, but he's one of the greats, and he's putting the ball on these receivers and throw with anticipation. And you know what, in the early going here, even if Michigan State's, not up, but if you see Cade McNamara and, he's not sharp and he doesn't have zip on the ball, if he doesn't have his fastball, it's like in a baseball game in a game 7, which, this could be related to. If you go out there and you got your starting pitcher and you know what, he's getting some outs, but he's giving up rockets and he doesn't have his normal arsenal. He doesn't have the zip on the ball. Well, go to the bullpen. PETA doesn't like us to call it the bullpen anymore. Go to the pen. Go to the McCarthy. See what kind of zip he has on the ball. One of those things. All right. Thanks for listening. And Monday is going to be pretty exciting. Listen to that for that. And, whether it's, you can look on Twitter and check out this, let it come to you. I'll have it for you. Thanks for watching. That's going to do it here on this afternoon live. Enjoy the game, everyone.